Another keynote presentation on social ecosystem development is the key for SDV, and it will be given by Mr. Muralidhar MK, Senior Director and Head Technical R&D Centers, Marelli, India. A huge round of applause for him.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I hope you had a good lunch and I hope you don't sleep during my short session. So this is MK once again, and I work for Marelli, one of the significant automotive tier 1 suppliers. We are very well entrenched into various product lines and also very well poised to be able to bring multiple domains together on a common platform to provide SDV kind of solutions. With this, let me get started. Even though it talks about social ecosystem for development and so on, I'll not be talking from a social impact standpoint. I'll be more talking from how to engineer the product in a social format and why this format is important and what we can learn from some adjacencies. So social ecosystem, what do I mean by this, right? We've heard words like community development, we have heard about open standards in the morning, open source, open platform, open architecture. I mean, all of us have been using this in some way or the other. Now, in my view, it is along with all of this, with a differentiated closed source that the industry can profit from SDV. So collaborate and integrate to profit is my theme here. So what is that we can learn from some of the adjacent industries? I mean, when we talk about adjacent industries, which is very close to doing something very similar already, then we think of obviously the mobile phones. Now, if you go way back, when you see these mobile phones, some of us would have likely used it as well. It was all about vertical integration, right? I mean, the entire software, the entire hardware, everything was built by an OEM and sold to the consumers. And it was very, very popular. It was a remarkable innovation at that point of time. I mean, very soon we got into situations like this where still there was significant amount of closed source platforming and the hardware. There was also a lot of vertical integration that was happening. But the app ecosystem was opened up for the creativity of the whole wide world. And everybody who was capable to handle that latched onto that. And we know what has happened, rest is history. So at the same time, this is still quite a bit verticalized or vertically integrated. There's another example, Android. Now this brought about things like open source software. It also had multi-source application, but it also had multi-source hardware, as in it standardized a certain set of layers in order to allow anybody to manufacture a mobile phone. It allowed any software developer to write an application without having to invest significant amount of money into it. It allowed all the industry players to give their creativity through the middlewares that came together to make this happen. While this was all controlled through a certain kind of certification process and so on, but this may not be enough for our industry, which is automotive, which is safety relevant. It is like a torpedo going at a very high speed and potential to kill anybody with, if there is a mistake in safety systems and so on. So there'll be slight differences from what we see here, but a lot of things we can borrow in terms of the way it was done. So these two ways in which it might go in the SDV industry as well, heavy deep pocket OEMs who would like to do a lot of vertical integration only allow the application space and services to be, more democratized and stuff like that. While there is other mass market manufacturers who would likely benefit from going through the Android based approaches, simply because the amount of engineering, the amount of software that goes into it, there is not enough people in the whole wide world today who can develop a very high quality software which requires to run these SDVs. Well, what are the takeaways for SDV from this adjacencies? The way I look at it is multi-source, modular, scalable hardware, that is sensors, actuators, zonal controller, high performance computing. When I say modular, what do I mean? In the life, let's say typical life of a car is 10 to 15 years. Now, over the life of the car, no matter what you do, your hardware is going to be obsolete, right? Is there some way we can keep it interesting? If not the Moore's law, at least more than the Moore's, can we add additional peripherals and make it more interesting? As in, you had an autonomous or level 2 or level 3 autonomous vehicle which was using just a camera based sensor. Can we add a LiDAR? Can we add a radar eventually, right? At the same time, can we update the software to support it and give more precision, for example? So such hardwares are a possibility as well, provided we standardize the interfaces of the hardware. Community or OEM driven, depending on iOS or Android type of development, OEMs might choose either the community based standardization of hardware interfaces, which is one of the most critical things to do. This is something that not everybody can do, only select few companies can do as of today. So if we are able to commoditize this, if we are able to standardize these interfaces, it allows creativity to much larger scale. OEM driven hardware test suite. I think my colleagues in the morning were really shouting loud saying that, you know, this is a safety relevant system and we cannot just let it go here and there. So there has to be absolute control mechanisms. The OEM has to warrant the car that you buy. If something goes wrong, somebody needs to be able to take responsibility of it. That makes it very important to do layer testing. So this includes the hardware test suite as well. This is very similar to the concept of vendor test suite in Android development. Multi-source middleware component development, as in there could be various different contributors who are giving specialized algorithms in a very domain separated fashion. I mean, this is not just one single big computer, but even if it is, there is domain separation, there are safety areas, there are security areas, there are also the QM areas and so on. So it has to be managed very well, but anybody can contribute with their expertise in this particular segment. Here again, largely big players as well as, you know, very entrenched research institutes, people who are doing R&D about the physics and the way that can be converted through software into something meaningful will play. Again, community-driven abstractions above the middleware in order to give a seamless interface to the top layer, which is coming, which is application. So middleware also has to be tested and ensured that everything is falling in place, everything is time-bound, everything is working as expected, there's no risk of any kinds. On top of it, obviously, OEMs would like to differentiate. Every OEM would like to have their own visualization, user experience, and so on. This will be tightly controlled and differentiated by OEMs. And last but not the least, which is what everybody is talking about, a sandboxed environment for application development and microservices development, which anybody in the whole wide world can participate with reasonable amount of creativity and good development practices. But across all of this, there are a couple things which we should not let go of. That is the tool chain, and there has to be a harmonized tool chain for everybody to use. We are talking about cloud native development here. So that means to say there should be a virtualized environment in order for most people to develop their software, you know, verify their software to the extent possible. A centralized benches developed by OEMs, which they can use to validate whatever their implementations are. Eventually, the test mules or test vehicles, even a shadow, a kind of a test that goes on a separate core in the real vehicle of the customer, all the way till actuation, but without doing actuation. With all these kind of verification and validation, you can potentially go into actual production, actual SOP, actual deployment. In this case, SOP means it could be every 2 weeks something new coming into the vehicle from a software point of view. It also means that, you know, there are very homologation mechanisms might dramatically change, as in you homologate the hardware, and every time you are adding new software, how do you make sure that it is approved before it goes into the vehicle? It is not hurting anybody. So mechanisms will likely evolve from a regulatory point of view to handle this as well. And just today morning, we were speaking with ARAI, and they are coming forward, collaborating with the industry to see how they can participate in enabling this innovation. Safety and security is at most important, and OEM has to make sure that all participants are within the boundaries of the expected safety and security limit. Just now my JLR colleagues also pointed out that how important it is for them to ensure the latest and the best that is there can be deployed from a security standpoint into the vehicle. In this, we can learn from IT adjacency, finance companies, and all the IT software which goes into that. They're quite well versed with that. I mean, there is some amount of it we can leverage from that industry. Well, last but not the least, which everybody talks about, is digital twin. This is an essential element because this is an environment where anybody can develop anything from anywhere as long as it is software, which will enable our industry. So OEM based DevOps infrastructure, in order to bring this wide variety of software from various different consumers together onto a single platform, is essential. Also, controlled OTA mechanisms managed by the OEMs is essential in order to keep up all the compatibilities, interoperabilities in place. Last but not the least, a test infra, which is including mule vehicles, centralized test bench or test farms, also some of the vehicles out in the field which can be operated remotely without impacting the functionality of the vehicle itself. Well, with all this, I would also like to bring a couple of open forums that is very, very active in this space. I think you would have heard, or most of you would have somehow participated in all these also. Eclipse Foundation has the Eclipse Software Defined Vehicle Forum, which is working very intensely on this topic. COESA is also working on the connected car infrastructure, which is contributing quite heavily into SDV space. SOFI is another open scalable architecture, which is, please take a look at it. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to contribute. Well, from a Marelli point of view, what is it that we are doing? We have the on-vehicle system, a typical architecture. And if you see that we have a standardized software platform with a hypervisor, domain separation for the QM or the Android-based infotainment system, an SLB-based cluster, for instance, and also adaptive AutocarProIndia-based systems for micro services or SOA architecture, right? And in top of that, we also do use a microcontroller for all the connectivity to the vehicle and communication and so on. We also have standalone applications for certain critical functionalities. Of course, digital twin for everything related to non-ADAS. We have already implemented. One of our vehicles is going to get launched very likely next year in China with zonal architecture. So when it comes to development over the cloud or a virtualized environment, a developer natively works on the cloud for doing all the development, does all the kind of verification like unit testing and static analysis and so on, does the creation of the container, and it gets deployed into the vehicle. Now before it goes live, we operate in a shadow mode that I was talking about a little bit earlier in terms of testing. So we can do all the actual sensor based data collection, all the processing, everything until actuation, but not the actuation, right? This is a closed loop verification that our functionality is working for all the real life test cases as well. Right, post that, we actually launch that into the vehicle through the OEM setup. So this is one of the products we have. As you know, Marelli is into lighting, we are into propulsion systems, we are into electronic systems like cockpit and clusters and so on. This is one platform where we are bringing use cases from all the three together on our zonal platform. So what is the summary? What is the takeaway? Really quick, if I had to say. One, the social ecosystem for SDV is evolving, and new players as well as partnerships, the way of working, engagement models are changing. Every OEM has to find the right balance between in-house development and partnership, because if all OEMs want to really develop the entire SDV stack, as I said before, there's not enough people, even considering India's population and number of engineers who come out every year, there's simply not enough skilled population in the whole wide world in the short term to be able to do something like this, very unique for every OEM. Multi-party collaboration is a key to drive innovation and unlock. So what I mean by this is multi-parties getting together, defining all the interfaces across layers, across components, is very, very crucial. It should be plug and play. if we are able to make our hardware and software more plug and play with a very structured development process, I'm very sure in the next few years we will be able to see very successful deployments of SDV without having to do mass recalls. Architecture, process, methods and tools, harmonization of this is very important. When you're putting a lot of software on one single HPC, for instance, or a zonal, it is very vital to ensure that every, let's say, provider is working on a harmonized development and verification validation platforms. So yeah, here is an interesting thing, business models. This also needs to change. I mean, I was just thinking of a wild idea yesterday that what if I have a car, it's my normal personal commuter car, and I have adjusted the settings of the car for my personal use. And suddenly I decide that I want to become an Ola driver. For those people who don't know what Ola is, maybe Uber driver, right? Then as soon as I download the Uber or Ola app and I initiate that I'm in the taxi mode right now, the car changes, the front grille shows that I'm a taxi, I'm either occupied or already somebody has booked my vehicle. It projects on the street that it is a taxi from Ola. For as soon as you get inside the car, your rear seat entertainment system as well as passenger display start showing Ola content, and you can use whatever. They can use it for captivated advertisements and stuff like that. So next morning you can be normal private commuter again. All of these things are very much possible. And in this case, will the OEM do all this development, or only OEM enables this development and earns out of it? Every time somebody uses Ola application, there are two ways in which OEM gets money out of this. One, certification of letting Ola come into the picture. Second is pay per use. Anybody uses it, they get a piece of it. You never know what the business model could be in the future. This is just a wild example, but there could be many more creative minds in the whole wide world who can come up with God knows what. OEMs, tier 1 tech suppliers may need to reinvent the roles. We talked about a little bit in the morning as well. So the lines across all of these traditional boundaries are changing. Now where it will land, how it will evolve, only time has to say. Regulations must evolve to support SDV. As we said, for example, you are able to develop on a weekly basis new feature, but if it takes a month's time to get approval from the regulatory body, it makes no sense, right? So there is a lot of evolution required on the regulatory side as well, while it is at most crucial to protect people from getting into accidents. SDVs are a cultural and social transformation. I think all of us have experienced this partly by the virtue of using smartphones. It'll be interesting to see how this transformation is going to be. Hopefully within our lifetimes, we have seen a lot of changes, and this will be one more interesting change that we'll definitely see. Collaboration and communication is the key. So industries have to come together. I mean, as we discuss more and more, we evolve more and more, and we see this success coming out of it. Well, that's all I had to say. I hope I'm still okay on time. All right. If anybody is having any questions, I'll be glad to take it. If not, when she says that I have to switch off, I will.